Towards Understanding with Clayton. This is a podcast where we try and get a sneak peek into someone else's world so that we can take something out of it and head towards a better understanding. Today, a young child who died on an operating theatre and had an experience of heaven. Boy, do we take a lot from this. We're going to have a chat to his dad, Todd Burpo, the author of the book, Heaven is for Real. Todd Burpo joins me on the line from the States. G'day, Todd.
Hey, good day, Clayton, and thanks for inviting me to Australia. You know, one of these days, my wife and I have talked about it. We really want to visit and go there in person, but I guess it's great to be able to be there on the air, so I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, no problems at all. This book is truly a remarkable book, and got to be honest with you, it was one of those books that when it came across my desk the first time went, oh, it's one of these stories of people going to heaven and then they come back and then you go, oh, there's so many people get skeptical about these things. Do we put an interview like this to air? But having read the book and just the reality that you put into this book, it's not a fanciful thing. It's just, hey, this is the story. And that's actually what you're trying to do. Just tell your son's story, don't you?
Yeah, well, this is a testimony, and that's what it is. You know, this is Colton, when he was almost 4, experienced, something remarkable. It was miraculous. He almost died. We almost lost him. We went through every parent's worst nightmare, seeing a child. They're supposed to make it to 4, right, Clayton?
Yeah.
And as parents, we were devastated realizing we might lose a child. And we were mad at God. We were upset. We were urgently praying, feverishly praying, asking people to pray with us for God to somehow spare our child's life when he was in surgery. And little did we know at the time, but later on, Colton would share that the very God I was mad at and screaming at he was sitting on Jesus' lap while he was in surgery. And incredible. He comes out as a child then. And I think what makes Colton's story so different maybe from other of the near-death experience books out there is it is the descriptions and the viewpoint of an almost 4-year-old. It's innocent, it's simple, it's direct, and I think that's what really causes it to be different and maybe endeared to more people than what maybe some of the other books accomplish.
Yeah. As we go through, and look, obviously, we've got a short interview. We can't cover off the entire book of what's in there, but some of the things that, there's moments where you're pretty obvious in there too, that you started scratching your head at the start as you started, obviously got better from this, which was the first, wonderful thing that happened. And then a few months later started sort of just mentioning a few things, and you're like, is he just making this up? Is it for real? And then he started giving some really solid things that matched up with things that you knew as a pastor, Todd, matched up in the Bible, and then some experiences of meeting some family members he didn't even know about who were in heaven as well. Can you take us through a couple of those experiences?
Sure. I think a lot of people, skeptics, even myself, I questioned my son at first, but I had the privilege of being close. And I think any parent can realize when their 4-year-old is telling the truth. They might not realize when their 14-year-old is, but at 4, we can figure that one out. Well, he talks about the Trinity, and comes up to me and says, do you know God's 3 persons, and describes him and explains him. I don't know how many adults have that figured out, but not to mention a 4-year-old. That's pretty incredible stuff. Not only that, he talks about things, I think a lot of the naysayers come up with excuses like, well, the chemicals and the memories work together, and they produce these images in people's minds. Well, they couldn't have produced him meeting his sister. We'd had a miscarriage, never told him about it. He walks into the room and says, Mom, you had a baby die in your tummy, didn't you? That was I'll never forget that moment. It started off devastating because the hurt that he brought to the surface, and it ended incredible when we found out about the peace that she can't wait for us to get there, and she's okay, and we know what she looks like. Incredible. He talks about my granddad. I think lots of us wonder, what do you look like when you go to heaven, and how do we recognize each other? Matter of fact, I think we've all lost someone we love. I have. I'm sure you probably have too, Clayton.
Yeah.
How do we recognize each other? He recognized a picture of my granddad taken back in the 1940s that no Sunday school teacher, nobody had ever seen him, ever showed it to him. He'd never seen it. It was put in a closet, packed away 5 years before he was ever born. And there's no way outside of him meeting my grandfather in heaven that he could have recognized that picture. So it's pretty incredible stuff.
He talks about a host of various things about, what the colours are in heaven, what Jesus looks like in heaven, all sorts of things. And a lot of these match with the Bible descriptions as well. And for you as a pastor, and we understand, a big part of the people who are listening right now might not have an extensive Bible understanding, but certainly for you, that was something that solidified it even more for you, wasn't it? That you knew you'd read these things in the Bible, and here he was describing them.
Well, I tried to trip him up with some scriptures. One of the things the Bible teaches, but I don't remember ever going over with him, is that it never gets dark in heaven. And I remember one time trying to ask him, well, Colton, when it got dark in heaven, where do you go to sleep? And he looked at me, got this just grimace on his face. Who told you it gets dark in heaven, Dad? It never gets dark, And it's just amazing, even those things that I tried to, that I knew in my limited understanding through the Bible about heaven, he was spot on. He never missed anything.
Yeah. Question I want to ask you from two perspectives, from your perspective and also from Colton's perspective as well. What's personally for you the most significant thing that you've got out of this whole revelation that Colton's brought to you? And also, what about for him? Often, this book is very much written, even though it's his story, it's your interactions about that, Todd, not necessarily his interactions, and probably rightly so. He was a child at the time. I think, is he about 11 now at the moment?
He's 12 now.
12 now. I mean, he's still a child. And, I understand the privacy issue of that too. So, but what's the impact it's had on him? So, you and him, what's the most important things?
Well, I think for me, he's been such an example of childlike faith. For many years, he'd get very upset. Why don't people believe the Bible, Dad? It's just right there. And I'd have to explain to him, Colton, people haven't seen what you've seen. He has just now grown old enough to realize that he's the different one. This happened so young in his early years of development. I realize as an adult, I question, I'm skeptical, I have doubts. And children, man, their faith is just so much stronger and purer than ours. And he's caused me to be a whole lot more childlike in my faith, which is just really, it's been a real growing process for me. The other thing that I think for him, I know we just finished a children's book. You might not know about that, but it's becoming available now, where it's his story. The first book is my story, but the children's book is first person Colton. And there's actually more details about heaven in it, because it just starts with him leaving the hospital and it ends with him going back to the hospital, all his getting sick and the experiences of Mom and Dad and how it came to us. It's not in the children's book. But I really think it's the better of two books, because it is his story, what he wants to tell. He was asked recently why he wanted to write the children's book, and this is what he said. He looked at the man that asked him, and he said, well, I want kids to know that you don't have to be scared when you go to heaven. Heaven's fun. And it's a place where Jesus loves you and you can feel the love. And I want you to know that Jesus will never change. And that's why I wrote the children's book. And that's just straight from him. And I wonder, what would church be like if kids grew up looking forward to heaven?
What a great question to ask. Great thing to ponder as well. I want to ask, Todd, a question for you and the family as a whole. Here's this revelation that you've been given. It's gone into book. You've decided to publicly share that as well. And I'm sure there's a whole lot of people saying, thank you so much for that. I'm sure, as we sort of noted at the start, there's a whole lot of people who are still going to be skeptical about this as well, and perhaps let you know about that too. How do you make sure that your family life doesn't become, in a sense, not a circus, but it's now very public? So how do you protect that, but also share?
Well, it's difficult. I'll be honest with you. We didn't foresee this book finding the audience it's found. We thought we'd help a few people and kind of just live life normally. Most books don't. I think right now my editor said it's approaching 6 million or just past 6 million in sales. That's pretty remote. That's a very rare case. So we didn't expect this. So Mom and I and the family, unfortunately, we've had a lot of friends come together and pray with us. We've had to try to set new boundaries. Colton still goes to school. He's involved in sports. I think so far this year he's only missed like 2 or 2.5 days because if heaven is for real. It's a real priority for us to keep him and his brother and sister in a kind of normal setting. And I think that's one of the things that I feel good about. We've done well there.
It's one of those things, isn't it? There's a family member, suddenly there's one of the children that is talked about a lot, the other two aren't, and I'm sure you got to balance all that out as well.
Well, I don't know. I think, his older sister, she wrote at the end of the book, her title for our book, my brother went to heaven and came back, but he's still no angel. She'll definitely not change her opinion on that one. I think little brother will agree with her Colby all the way. But, both of them, they have adopted Colton's childlike faith, too. They both know it's real, but I want you to know Colton hasn't grown wings or become perfect because he went to heaven either. He's still a normal kid. He still needs grace. And yet his faith is something to model. It is powerful, but he's still like the rest of us. He has his up days, down days, and only by the grace of God can we live the way Christ wants us to. Yeah.
Now, in the book, people will be able to, obviously, they can get that and read it a bit more if they're wanting to find out more about your story. But is there any stories in there that stories that you didn't actually get into the book that you go, oh, it's a great one. Now I almost wish I had actually put that in for people to hear. Is there any stories like that?
Well, I think there are some more details about heaven, like what does Gabriel look like, Michael look like, things like that most of us guys like you and me probably are more interested in, like what does Michael's sword look like, the captain of the Lord's army, and that's in the children's book. Right. So the children's book is actually, there's pictures in there, drawings, some of those details that I think people would just like to know about heaven. But one of the things that he puts in there as he describes heaven in the children's book, and that's given us a chance to add some more of those details, is he describes it as a city that just keeps growing. But he's like this, but Dad, in heaven you can just feel God's love all the time. You can just feel it. And as a child describing that, it's pretty incredible because people say, well, what's heaven like? He says, well, it's like you're finally home and you just never want to leave. And I think as believers, the big struggle we have, especially when we say goodbye to a loved one at a funeral, and one day, we know we're all going to leave this world. Are we leaving home or are we going home? And Colton will tell you straight up, oh, man, you're home when you're in heaven.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much, Todd, for your time today. If there's a message you'd leave with everybody, maybe somebody who is a believer in Christ or someone who's not, what's your message today as you have an opportunity to speak into the lives of people across Melbourne right now?
Sure. Well, I would just like to tell them that the Burpo family is not special. We're just kind of a normal family. We struggle with paying the bills. People look at me, well, you're a pastor. Man, I still struggle with temper and things like other men do too. We're not different, but we serve an extraordinary God. And the God that somehow, for some reason, chose to do this miracle in our family is the same God that's alive and well today, and he wants to be at work in your family too. I guarantee you, God by faith, if you pray, he's there to answer your prayer every bit as much as ours. We are not special or somehow different, and God loves you not one bit less than us, and that's what I want people to know.
Todd Burpo, the author of Heaven is for Real, a little boy's astounding story of his trip to heaven and back. Truly a book that has remarkably impacted my life and remarkably impacted the lives of other people that I've been talking to in our home group and those sorts of things as well. Todd, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, well, thank you, Clayton. I've sure enjoyed it.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielen. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.